Shoplifting again? The voice slices through the noise of Westfield Mall. Heads turn. A teenager stands frozen, clutching a crumpled 20. The cop's hand is already on her wrist. Joseph is 17, tired from exam week and saving for a birthday gift. The 20 came from her own wallet, but Officer Richard doesn't see that. He sees a girl who doesn't belong among polished glass cases and weekend crowds. His grip tightens, sharp as the judgment in his eyes. The crowd gathers, curious, entertained. Madison's voice cracks but doesn't shake. It's my money. Kane's boot sends her backpack skidding across the floor. Loose notebooks and a birthday card slide under the jewelry counter. Someone laughs. Someone records. She presses one thumb against her phone screen. No need to look. One message, sent blind. Then she straightens her shoulders and stops resisting. Kane's thoughts run like an old script. 8 years on the force, 8 years of filing people into boxes. He doesn't see the girl's steady breathing or the way she counts under it. 1, 2, 3, 4. He sees patched jeans, worn sneakers, hair that hasn't seen a salon in months. He builds his profile the way he's been taught. No father, overworked mother, trouble waiting to happen. Juvenile theft. Bringing her in, he mutters into his radio. His partner's reply crackles back, thin and indifferent. The girl speaks quietly. My mother's Lieutenant Colonel Barbara. She's stationed at Fort Bragg. You can call her. He smirks. Sure, and I'm the president. The cuffs click. The mall lights reflect off the metal as he leads her outside. Behind them, phones keep filming. The air tastes like humiliation. Inside the cruiser, Madison watches the streetlights flash by. She's still counting. 1, 2, 3, 4. Kane thinks it's panic. It's not. 15 miles away in a windowless room at Fort Bragg, 3 alerts appear on military screens. Dependent in distress. Civilian custody. Priority response. A woman in desert tan reads it twice. Once as a soldier, once as a mother. Then she's moving. Kane doesn't know it yet, but his clock has started. The Greystone Police Department smells like burnt coffee and cheap disinfectant. Madison sits on a plastic chair, silent. Her phone's locked behind the front desk. In her pocket, torn edges of a birthday card scratch against her palm. Officer Mark, new enough to still feel uneasy, watches from his desk. Something's off. The girl doesn't look angry, just precise, like she's waiting for the right moment to breathe. Kane unwraps his sandwich, scrolling through his phone between bites. He glances at her now and then, the way someone checks a ticking clock they don't expect to stop. Sir, Madison says, standing. May I use the restroom? Sit down, he mutters. She waits. 5 minutes. 10. Her voice shrinks. Please, I really need to... Kane's reply comes through a mouthful of bread. In a minute. Somewhere outside, tires hiss against wet pavement. Inside, time holds its breath. The first uniformed shadow passes the frosted glass door. The clock on the station wall clicks past 4:30. The sound is small, but it fills the silence. Madison sits upright, palms pressed to her knees, as Officer Richard circles back for another round. You're not leaving until someone claims you, he says, voice flat. If anyone does. Madison lifts her chin. My mom's at Fort Bragg. Kane sighs like he's been repeating a joke that stopped being funny hours ago. Right. The superhero soldier mom. Heard it. He finally meets her eyes, expression carved from boredom and control. Here's a free life tip. Truth makes things easier. Where'd that 20 come from? I earned it, she says. Allowance. $2 a week for 10 weeks. He snorts. Allowance? From a Green Beret mom too busy saving the world to pick you up? Across the room, Officer Mark shifts. Derek, maybe we should... Kane cuts him off. Should what? Let her go? She lied. She's got cash she can't explain. That's not protocol. Mark doesn't argue. Not really, just looks at the floor and stays small. Madison sits again, hands clasped tight to hide the tremor. She closes her eyes. In for 4. Hold. Out for 6. Her mother's voice echoes from years ago. Rain against a window, thunder shaking the house. Fear is just a feeling, Maddie. Count with me. She counts now. One breath, then another. Outside, a black Ford F-250 rolls to a stop. The engine quiets. Boots hit asphalt, sharp and even. The name on the uniform reads Gray. Inside, Kane opens a drawer, dragging out an incident report. He clicks his pen twice, each sound deliberate. So, he says, pretending patience. Tell me about this elite mom of yours. Rank? Unit? Or do we skip to the part where you admit you made it up? Lieutenant Colonel Barbara, Madison replies. 3rd Special Forces Group, Fort Bragg. He doesn't write, just smiles at Mark like they're in on the same joke. Lieutenant Colonel, huh? That's cute. You know what happens to kids who lie to cops? Goes on a record. You apply to college, they see it, toss your file in the trash. Madison's throat tightens, but she stays still. She's 17, and no one ever taught her that grown men in uniform sometimes lie too. Kane leans forward. Address? She gives it. Mother's full name? Catherine Ann Gray? And your father? Her voice dips. He died when I was 5. Kandahar? Mark looks up sharply. Kane's tone softens just enough to sound crueler. Ah, so mom's gone a lot, huh? That why you make up stories? Need attention? Madison stares past him, eyes fixed on a crack in the wall. He calls to Mark. Write this down. Attention-seeking behavior due to parental absence. Unresolved grief. Mark's fingers hover, not typing. Derek, she's just a kid. She's a liar, Kane snaps, and liars waste taxpayer dollars. The air conditioner sputters out. The room turns heavy, sweat beads at Madison's temple. The poster behind Kane shows an eagle and 3 words: integrity, service, respect. He checks his watch, 4:45. Nearly an hour. No calls, huh? He says. Guess mom's busy. He closes the folder with a sharp crack. 15 more minutes. If nobody shows, I'm calling Child Protective Services. Maybe they'll find you a home where someone gives a damn. Madison's breath stumbles. In for 4. Hold. Out for 6. Outside, the door handle twitches once. Then again. The first sound is the door. A heavy thud against its frame. Then boots. Each step rings like a metronome counting down to judgment. Madison keeps her hands pressed together, fingertips whitening with effort. She breathes in the rhythm her mother taught her. 4 in, hold, 6 out. The air feels too thick to swallow. Across the room, Officer Mark glances at the entrance. His chair creaks. The color drains from his face. Derek. Kane looks up, impatient. The next second, the sound hits him. Hard soles striking linoleum with military precision. 30 minutes earlier. In the back of Kane's patrol car, Madison's thumb hovered over her phone. She didn't text her mother's cell, not the base operator. She used the number her mom made her memorize 2 years ago, a line meant for emergencies that couldn't wait. The message was spare. Detained by police. Westfield Mall. Officer hostile. Need you. She hit send and watched the screen go dark, not knowing that her words had just jumped far beyond her mother's phone. At Fort Bragg, 15 miles away, an alert pulsed red through the Joint Operations Command channel, the system reserved for dependents of high-clearance personnel in danger. The kind of protocol meant for kidnappings, not bad mall policing. A Pentagon duty officer read the alert twice, frowned, and forwarded it straight to Colonel Barbara's tactical coordinator. Inside a secure conference room, Colonel Gray sat across from 3 NATO advisors, reviewing classified logistics. Her phone was silent, except for one priority setting. When it buzzed once against the table, she glanced down. The room fell quiet. Her expression didn't change, but the temperature seemed to drop. Everything all right, Colonel? Someone asked. Family emergency, she said, already standing. We'll reconvene tomorrow. She was out the door before the sentence ended. Get my vehicle and dress uniform. 5 minutes, she told her aide. Yes, ma'am. In the locker room, her movements were mechanical. Training fatigues off, Class A uniform on, ribbons, insignia, years of proof that she was not a story to be doubted. Someone touched my daughter, she thought. Someone made her afraid enough to trigger the code. By the time she slid behind the wheel of the black F-250, her pulse had steadied into something colder than anger. She didn't need to speed. Precision was its own kind of power. They thought I was fiction, she thought. They'll learn I'm fact. Back at the Greystone Police Department, Madison sat under the flicker of a fluorescent light. Kane's voice still echoed. Threats of foster care, the word liar hanging in the air. But she'd made her choice. No tears, no begging. Just control. Breathe in. Hold. Breathe out. Her hand stopped shaking. When Kane met her gaze again, she didn't look away. He mistook her stillness for surrender. It wasn't. It was calculation. Then the rhythm began. Boot heels. Sharp, steady, growing louder. Mark froze, eyes widening as realization spread across his face. When the door opened, the air itself seemed to contract. Colonel Barbara walked in. Desert tan fatigues pressed to precision, boots polished to mirror shine, insignia bright against her chest. The bronze star caught the fluorescent light like a flare. The room went silent. Phones stopped ringing. Kane's smirk faltered. Gray's eyes found Madison first. A soldier scan. Posture, expression, hands. No visible injuries. Her daughter's chin lifted in answer, the smallest nod. I'm okay. Only then did Colonel Gray turn toward Kane. Some silences are louder than gunfire. The one in the Greystone station could drown a man. Colonel Barbara's voice doesn't rise. It doesn't need to. Officer, explain why my daughter was detained. Each word lands measured, deliberate, honed to a point. Kane, who once believed posture was power, straightens to his full height. It doesn't help. Ma'am, your daughter had unexplained cash at a jewelry counter. We brought her here for her safety. Possible theft. Gray's expression doesn't move. Theft? Yes, ma'am. What evidence? She had $20 and couldn't adequately explain. She's 17, Gray replies. How many explanations must a child give before an adult believes her? Her boots sound soft, but certain as she takes one step closer. Which store reported missing property? Kane blinks. None, but the situation seemed suspicious. Suspicious, she repeats. Define that. He fumbles. Earlier today, she was trespassing. Lincoln Park Trail? Posted signs? The trail's been public access since Ordinance 443B 6 years ago. Would you like me to pull it up or continue fabricating? The word fabricating hits harder than any insult. Mark looks up, startled. Kane's throat tightens. Ma'am, he manages. With all respect, rank doesn't matter here. Civilian jurisdiction. Gray's reply is calm and lethal. Correct. Rank doesn't matter. Accuracy does. She reaches into her pocket, removes her military ID, and places it on the desk. You told my daughter she lied about who I am. Was she lying? Mark picks up the KC card. His hands shake. Derek, he whispers. She's a lieutenant colonel. Kane glances at the card, then at Gray. His face begins to collapse around the edges. Maybe there's been a misunderstanding, he offers. There wasn't, Gray says. You made an assumption. Her smile is small, precise. Show me the incident report. Kane's fingers stumble as he opens the folder. The paper slides across the desk like a confession. Gray reads in silence, jaw tightening as her eyes trace each line. Attention-seeking behavior, fabrication suspected, parental absence, unresolved grief. When she finally speaks, her voice is almost gentle. Officer Kane, before writing this psychological evaluation of my daughter, did you verify my identity? He swallows. No. Did you deny her access to a bathroom while in custody? Madison nods once. Gray's tone cools further. She didn't ask, correct? Kane begins. I asked twice, Madison says, her voice steady. Mark clears his throat. She did, Derek. I heard her. Gray's gaze doesn't waver. Thank you, Officer Mark. Now, Officer Kane, how long did you make her wait? He doesn't answer. Gray's words become precise as a report being read aloud. You detained a minor without notifying her guardian. You withheld basic needs. You accused her of a crime with no evidence. Then you composed an unqualified psychological assessment. Is your body camera footage available? Color drains from Kane's face. There was a malfunction. A malfunction, Gray repeats. How convenient. She lifts her phone. Mine didn't malfunction. Kane stares. You can't. North Carolina is a one-party consent state, Gray interrupts. I can record any conversation I'm part of. I've been recording since I arrived. She tilts her head. Would you like to correct any of your previous statements? Mark's fingers freeze above his keyboard. Kane's mouth opens, but no words come. The weight of silence returns, heavier, final. In a room thick with tension, a mother's quiet voice cuts through the chaos like a blade. Colonel Gray's voice never rises. It's calm, controlled, and colder than any shout. Officer, explain to me why my daughter was detained. Kane's smirk flickers for a second but holds. He stands tall, trying to reassert control. Ma'am, your daughter had unexplained cash at a jewelry counter. We brought her here while we investigated possible theft. Gray's gaze never wavers. Theft, she repeats, her voice unchanging. What evidence of theft did you observe? Kane falters. She had $20 and couldn't explain it adequately. Gray steps closer. Her movement's deliberate, not aggressive, just certain. She's 17. How much explanation does a 17-year-old need before an adult believes her? She stands tall, the air between them thick with authority. Which store reported missing items? Kane stumbles, then admits, no store reported anything missing. But the situation seems suspicious. Skepticism is not proof, Gray counters sharply. Be specific. How was it suspicious? His words trip over themselves. Earlier today, she was trespassing on Lincoln Park Trail. The trail's marked with private property signs. The trail's been public access for 6 years, officer. Would you like me to pull up the city ordinance right now or continue lying? The accusation hangs in the air like a slap. Mark looks up in surprise, but Kane's confidence cracks. Ma'am, Kane says, attempting to regain his composure. With all due respect, rank doesn't matter here. This is civilian jurisdiction. Gray responds with chilling calm. Correct. Rank doesn't matter. Accuracy does. She reaches into her jacket pocket and places her military ID on the desk, the silver eagle and ribbons gleaming under the fluorescent lights. You told my daughter she was lying about who I am? Was she lying? Mark's hands tremble as he picks up the card. Derek, he whispers, his voice a ghost of its usual strength. She's a lieutenant colonel. Kane looks at the card but says nothing, his confidence deflating. There's been no misunderstanding, Gray says flatly. You made an assumption. Her smile is razor thin. I'd like to see the incident report now. Kane's hands shake as he pulls the report from the drawer, sliding it across the desk. Gray reads it, her eyes scanning the words slowly. Attention-seeking behavior, fabrication suspected, parental absence, unresolved grief. When she finishes, her gaze sharpens. Officer Kane, before you wrote this psychological evaluation, did you confirm my identity? His throat tightens. No. Did you deny my daughter access to a bathroom while she was in your custody? Madison nods once. Gray's eyes flash with anger, her voice icy. She didn't ask, did she? Kane begins, but Gray cuts him off. I asked twice, Madison says, her voice steady now, each word weighed down with the truth. Mark, still behind his desk, speaks up, his voice trembling. She did ask, Derek. I heard her. Gray's gaze shifts to Mark. Officer Mark, did you stop him? Mark shifts, his face contorted with guilt. No, ma'am, I didn't. That's complicity, Officer Mark, Gray says, her tone sharp as a whip. Remember that. The door behind them swings open, and Sergeant Ortiz steps into the room. She's mid-40s with sharp eyes and a no-nonsense attitude. Her gaze flicks over the scene, Kane sweating, Mark pale, and Madison sitting like a calm island in the storm. "Someone care to explain what's happening in my station?" Gray hands Ortiz the report. "Your officer detained my daughter without cause, denied her basic needs, and falsified this report. I'm filing a formal complaint." Ortiz reads the report, her jaw tightening with every line. When she finishes, she looks at Kane with a look of disgust. "My office, now," she says, her voice leaving no room for argument. Kane attempts to defend himself, his words stumbling. "Sarge, it was just a misunderstanding." Ortiz doesn't respond to him. Her eyes stay fixed on Gray. "Get your things. We're leaving." Madison stands and grabs her backpack. Kane hands her the phone with no words, no apology. As they make their way toward the door, Gray pauses and glances back at Ortiz. "One more thing, Sergeant," Gray says, her voice colder than ever. "You might want to check how many complaints Officer Kane has had dismissed internally. I have a feeling this isn't his first time." 3 days later. The Greystone Police Department receives a certified letter from the Department of Defense. Equipment suspension pending investigation. At Gray's home, the hum of her laptop is the only sound breaking the silence of the night. It's late, nearly 10 p.m., and Madison is upstairs, finally resting after a shower and a grilled cheese sandwich. Gray had insisted on the sandwich before they spoke further about what happened. Alone in the quiet house, Gray turns her focus back to the screen. The Department of Defense Law Enforcement Support Program page sits open. The header reads, DOD Liaison Officer, Police Equipment Transfer Oversight. Below that, Authorized Personnel Only. TSCI clearance required. Gray's signature flashes on the screen, approving countless documents. Equipment authorizations, training audits, federal grants. It's routine work, but tonight the weight of it all presses down on her. In the quiet of her office, decisions that could unravel a department are made with the tap of a keyboard. For the past 4 years, Colonel Gray has been the authority on which police departments get access to military surplus. She decides which departments are qualified to handle the advanced gear they're given. In 2023 alone, Greystone PD received nearly $500,000 worth of equipment, armored vehicles, high-tech surveillance tools, and heavy-duty body armor. But receiving it came with rules. The department had to meet certain standards, such as an 80% training completion rate and a commitment to constitutional policing. As Gray pulls up their compliance file, the numbers jump off the screen. The training rate is only 62%. They've failed the threshold by 18 points. In the last 2 years, 18 complaints of excessive force have been filed. And the body camera malfunction rate? A staggering 34%. The national average is 6. Gray digs deeper, looking at the names attached to the complaints. Richard's name appears 3 times. All the investigations were internal. All of them were closed without action. The pattern is right there in front of her eyes, glaring, but it's been ignored. With her jaw tightening, Gray opens a new window and starts drafting a report. She details every violation, every inconsistency, and everything that happened to Madison. She includes case numbers, dates, and a timeline that will go straight to Washington by dawn. When she finishes, she hits save, then picks up the phone. First call. Captain Brooks from JAG answers on the second ring. Colonel Gray, burning the midnight oil? Brooks, I need a full audit of Greystone Police Department's federal contracts, Priority Alpha. I want everything. Training logs, force reports, any federal funds they've received in the last 5 years. There's a pause on the other end. Laura, if you're personally involved in this, it could complicate things. They put their hands on my daughter, Gray says, her voice flat. They humiliated her in public, lied in their reports. I need this audit, and I need it tomorrow morning. Brooks exhales, a long breath of understanding. Understood. It'll be on the secretary's desk by 0800. Second call. Gray scrolls through her contacts and hits Jacob Personal. The phone rings twice before Senator Jacob picks up. Laura, it's late. What's going on? Not good, Gray replies. Madison was falsely detained by the local police today. I need your committee to look into police militarization abuses in Greystone. I'll send you the full file. Benjamin's voice goes icy. They touched Madison? They grabbed her at the mall. They accused her of theft with no proof. They held her for over an hour and mocked her when she asked them to call me. I want hearings, Jacob. I want this department under investigation. Send me everything you have. If they've used federal resources to hurt my daughter, I'll make sure their chief never wears a badge again. Third call. Gray finds Jonathan's name in her contacts. DOJ Civil Rights Division. They've worked together before. Laura Gray? Jonathan's voice comes through warmly. It's been a while. What's going on? I've got a case for you, Gray says. Excessive force complaints ignored, body cam tampering, federal violations, civil rights abuse of a minor. Want it? Jonathan doesn't hesitate. Always email me the complaint. We'll get the investigation started Monday morning. Gray hangs up the phone and sets it down. 3 investigations now underway. One with the DOD, another with the Senate, and a third with the DOJ. The weight of it all is starting to sink in, but it isn't over. Not by a long shot. She closes her laptop and leans back, the silence of the room wrapping around her like a cloak. 20 miles away, Richard sits on his couch. It's his 3rd beer of the night, and the department group chat is buzzing with new messages. He's been telling the story, embellishing it with every retelling. Military mom actually showed up in camo. LOL. Bet she drives a Prius with an army sticker. Did you salute her, bro? Kane chuckles and types back, she can wear whatever costume she wants. Doesn't change jurisdiction. A letter arrives, one that could change everything. $500,000 in gear hangs by a thread. Sergeant Ortiz's text appears on Kane's phone, the screen lighting up with a single line. Need to see you tomorrow. Don't come in until I call. He reads it with a furrowed brow, but shakes it off. Probably just some routine follow-up, he mutters. Maybe she got a complaint. Ortiz will smooth it over like always. 3 days later, the letter arrives at Greystone PD, delivered at precisely 9 a.m. Chief Ronald takes it, signing for it himself before tearing open the envelope. His eyes scan the letterhead. Department of Defense, Office of the Inspector General. He reads the opening line 3 times as though he's misinterpreting it. Equipment transfer authorization suspended pending investigation into training compliance failures and credible civil rights violations. A cold sweat forms on his brow as his hand trembles. $500,000 in federal gear, all frozen by a single letter. The door to Briggs's office creaks open, and Ortiz steps in. City Attorney Melissa follows, sitting with a professional poise. Kane lingers near the door, his arms crossed, trying to appear indifferent, but clearly uncomfortable. Briggs reads the letter aloud, his voice tight with barely contained frustration. Failure to maintain required training standards. Credible complaint of constitutional rights violation by officer under DOD oversight. Equipment transfer authorization suspended. Effective immediately pending full departmental audit. He slams the letter down on the desk and looks at the room full of people, his gaze narrowing with cold fury. Someone, explain to me how we go from a routine mall stop to losing $500,000 in equipment. Morse flips through her notes, unfazed. The complainant is Lieutenant Colonel Catherine Gray, U.S. Army Special Operations Command. She's the DoD liaison for all equipment transfers in this region. She's the person who approved our gear in the first place. Briggs's eyes widen, his disbelief growing. Jesus Christ, he mutters, rubbing his temple. Morse continues. It gets worse. Senator Benjamin's office called earlier. The Armed Services Committee is opening an inquiry into the abuse of police militarization. Greystone is specifically named as one of the case studies. Briggs leans back in his chair, pinching the bridge of his nose. What else? Morse's voice is calm, but the weight of her words lands hard. The Department of Justice Civil Rights Division opened a pattern and practice investigation yesterday. They'll be reviewing every excessive force complaint we've received in the last 5 years. The room falls into an uneasy silence. Kane shifts on his feet, his face growing pale. Finally, Briggs speaks, his voice taut with frustration. Officer Kane, explain exactly what happened. No excuses, just the facts. Kane clears his throat, his discomfort palpable. Chief, I saw a juvenile with unexplained cash at a jewelry counter. I detained her for questioning. She said her mother was military, which seemed unlikely given the circumstances. I brought her in to verify her story. Briggs leans forward, his voice like steel. Did you confirm her story before detaining her? The situation required immediate action, Kane begins. Yes or no, Derek? Briggs demands. Kane hesitates, his shoulders sinking. No, sir. Did you turn off your body camera? Briggs's voice rises, eyes locking onto Kane's. Kane shifts nervously. There was a technical malfunction. Briggs's eyes harden. I asked if you turned it off. Yes or no, Derek? There's a long pause. Yes, sir. Briggs slams his fist down onto the desk with a force that makes everyone jump. You detained a 17-year-old girl, the daughter of a Pentagon liaison officer, without cause. You denied her access to a parent, you turned off your camera to cover it up, and then you wrote a psychological evaluation without any qualifications. Do you have any idea what you've done to this department? Kane clenches his jaw, his voice defensive. Chief, I was just doing my job. Briggs's anger flares. Your job is to serve and protect, not to humiliate a child because she doesn't meet your narrow-minded assumptions. Turning to Morse, Briggs asks, what are we looking at legally? Morse's response is calm but serious. 3 federal investigations, possible loss of all DoD grants, about 40% of our equipment budget. A civil lawsuit from Colonel Gray is likely, and depending on DOJ findings, we may be placed under a consent decree. Briggs repeats the phrase slowly, a dark realization dawning. Consent decree, Morse nods grimly. It means federal oversight, a court order that imposes strict monitoring and reforms. Briggs rubs his face, the weight of the situation sinking in. We're finished. What starts as a simple incident spirals into a whirlwind of consequences, and a career teeters on the edge of collapse. Federal oversight, Ortiz says, the words hanging heavy in the air. For years, possibly as long as 10. Briggs looks like he's been struck. He stares at the paper in front of him, still processing. Get out of my office, Kane. You're on leave, effective immediately. Full pay, but you're not setting foot here until the investigation wraps. Chief out. By the second day, the story explodes. Local news picks up the report first. Military mother exposes police misconduct. Federal investigation launched. The footage is polished, shots of Fort Bragg, Greystone PD, and carefully phrased commentary that never directly names Madison, but leaves the power dynamics impossible to ignore. By the third day, the story turns regional, and then it snowballs. Lieutenant Colonel initiates DoD audit after daughter's detention. Someone leaks Kane's incident report, and by day 4, the redacted version floods social media. The internet does what it does best. It amplifies. Twitter ignites. Greystone PD trends across the country. Believe Kids becomes a rallying cry. Hundreds of threads dissect the case, racking up thousands of retweets. Reddit's Justice Served thread surges to 80,000 upvotes in less than 24 hours. The top comment reads, imagine mocking a kid who says her mom's military, then seeing a full colonel walk through the door. Chef's kiss. TikTok joins the fray. A video detailing Madison's story without showing her face goes viral, racking up 4 million views within 3 days. The line, your mom's in the military, she's gonna fly in wearing combat boots, becomes an instant meme, a symbol of poetic justice. Gray stays out of the spotlight, refusing all interview requests. Her public affairs officer issues a single statement. Colonel Gray has full confidence in the ongoing federal investigations and will not be commenting further at this time. But the silence only fans the flames. Richard's life unravels as he's left to watch it all unfold from home. His phone buzzes constantly, notifications of his name being dragged through the mud online. On administrative leave, he spends his days stuck in a loop of headlines and social media posts. His union rep sits across from him at a Denny's far from Greystone, telling him the harsh truth. Derek, I'll back you up because it's my job, but if they prove you turned off your body cam on purpose, I can't help you. That's evidence tampering. Kane stares down into his coffee, processing. It was supposed to be a simple stop. Well, it's not simple anymore, the rep responds. The phone buzzes again with messages from fellow officers. Most remain supportive, but Kane can feel the shift. He notices who's gone silent in the group chat, who's distancing themselves from him. At home, his wife looks at him after the kids are asleep and asks, "Why didn't you just let her call her mom?" He doesn't have an answer. The internal investigation takes place in a neutral room at City Hall, not the PD. Madison sits between her mother and a victim's advocate from the state attorney general's office. The investigator, Sarah Torres, has a gentle demeanor but doesn't hold back with her questions. "Madison, did Officer Kane threaten you?" Madison takes her time to answer, making sure she's precise. "He didn't hurt me, but he told me I'd have a record that colleges would see. I'm 17. I didn't know if that was true or not." The advocate leans in, her voice firm. "That's coercion. Textbook intimidation." Torres writes quickly, but her face doesn't change. "Did Officer Kane deny you access to a bathroom?" "Yes, I asked twice. He said, 'in a minute,' but then never let me go." "How long were you in his custody?" "Over an hour, I think." Gray's hand rests on Madison's shoulder, grounding her. Torres writes faster, but keeps her expression neutral. "Thank you, Madison," Torres says. "You're very brave." Later that day, Torres speaks with Officer Mark. He sits alone, no union rep, no backup. Just him and the truth. "Officer Mark, did Officer Kane turn off his body camera on purpose?" Mark stares down at his hands, struggling with the weight of the question. "Yes." "Can you tell me what he said?" Mark hesitates, then admits, "He said, 'No one needs to see this.' Then he turned it off before we entered the mall." In the world of power and policy, one letter can dismantle a career and expose a department's darkest truths. "Federal oversight," Ortiz's voice cuts through the tension. "For up to 10 years. Briggs, visibly stunned, stares at the paper as though it's about to set his office on fire. "Get out of my office, Kane. You're on administrative leave. Full pay, but you don't come near this building until the investigation is finished." Chief out. By the second day, the story makes headlines. Local media is first, reporting, "Military mother exposes corruption in Greystone PD." Federal inquiry launched. The segment is tightly controlled, showing footage of Fort Bragg and the Greystone PD building, while subtly framing the power imbalance. Madison's name remains absent, but the underlying dynamics are impossible to miss. By the third day, it spreads regionally, then nationally. Lieutenant Colonel Sparks' DOD audit. After daughter's false detention, the leak of Kane's incident report shakes the internet by day 4. Social media explodes. Twitter erupts. Greystone PD trends. The hashtag #BelieveKids becomes a rallying cry. Thousands of retweets pile up as Reddit's "Justice Served" thread surges to 80,000 upvotes in less than 24 hours. The top comment? Imagine mocking a child for saying her mom's special forces, then watching a full colonel walk in, wearing the uniform. TikTok picks it up next. A video telling Madison's story, with her face never shown, garners 4 million views within 3 days. The line, "Your mom's in the military, she's gonna fly in wearing combat boots," quickly turns into a viral meme, embodying a moment of instant justice. Gray, resolute in her silence, refuses all interviews. A single statement is released. Colonel Gray has full confidence in the ongoing federal investigations and will not be commenting further at this time. But her silence feeds the fire. Richard watches the online storm from the safety of his home. On administrative leave, his phone buzzes constantly, his name dragged through social media mud. At a distant Denny's, his union representative sits across from him, delivering blunt truth. "Derek, I'll defend you. It's my job. But if they prove you deliberately turned off your body cam, I'm out. That's evidence tampering." Kane stares into his coffee, the words sinking in. "It was just supposed to be a routine stop." "Well, it's not simple anymore," the rep answers. The phone buzzes again. Messages pour in from colleagues, some supportive, some indifferent. Kane notices who's gone silent, who's distancing themselves. One night, after the kids are in bed, his wife quietly asks, "Why didn't you just let her call her mom?" He has no response. The internal investigation is held at City Hall, far from the police station's walls. Madison sits between her mother and a state-appointed victim's advocate. Investigator Sarah Torres listens closely, asking pointed questions with a calm demeanor. Madison, did Officer Kane threaten you? Madison is careful with her answer. He didn't physically hurt me, but he told me I'd have a record that colleges would see. I didn't know if that was true. The victim's advocate speaks up, her voice firm. That's coercion, pure and simple. Intimidation. Torres writes quickly, noting every word. Did Officer Kane deny you access to a bathroom? Yes, I asked twice. He said, in a minute, but I was never allowed to go. How long were you held? Over an hour, I think. Gray's hand remains on Madison's shoulder, providing a calm presence. Torres's pen scribbles faster, but she remains impassive. Thank you, Madison. You've been very brave, Torres says. Later that day, Torres speaks with Officer Mark, alone in a quiet room. No union rep, no support, just Mark and the truth he's tried to avoid. Officer Mark, did Officer Kane deliberately turn off his body camera? Mark stares at his hands, the weight of the truth heavy on him. After a long moment, he responds, Yes. Can you clarify what he said? Mark exhales slowly. He said, No one needs to see this. Then he turned the camera off before we entered the mall. Madison's ordeal would never leave her. The humiliation she endured, the hands that gripped her too tightly, and the false accusations of lying would stay with her forever. The applause that followed felt like a cold mockery. Kane, standing before the council, choked out an apology, his voice barely a whisper. I made a mistake. I'm sorry for what happened to Madison. I want to make things right. But there was something in his eyes. His regret wasn't for her, it was because his career was on the line. The council voted without hesitation. He would be fired, his pension gone. 3 days later, Brian Mark sat before a much smaller crowd. His punishment? A 6-month unpaid suspension, mandatory retraining, and 2 years of probation. One more slip-up, and he'd be out for good. Afterward, he found Gray waiting for him outside. Ma'am, I should have stopped him, Mark confessed, his voice cracking. I knew what he was doing was wrong. I'm truly sorry. Gray met his gaze, her face unreadable. Yes, Officer Mark, it is your responsibility. Don't let this happen again. Without another word, he walked away, empty, a man broken by his own inaction. A month passed. Richard sat alone in a small apartment far from Greystone. The weight of everything he had lost was suffocating. His house was gone, sold off in a desperate bid to stay afloat. No one wanted to hire him. Security firms turned him away. Retail companies rejected his applications. Even private investigators ignored him. His wife had left too. I can't stand watching you destroy yourself, Derek, she had said. I can't be a part of this. His children now lived with her, and when he saw them on weekends, they looked at him like a stranger. One night, he opened Facebook, a tag. The comments under his name were brutal. Hope this guy never works again, one read. The teenager had more integrity than him, another one said. Derek closed his laptop and sat in the silence of his small apartment. The thin walls let in the sounds of his neighbor's TV. His mind wandered back to Madison, to the way he had dismissed her claim about her mother being in special forces. How certain he had been that she was lying. He thought he was teaching her respect, but in truth, he never respected her enough to even check the facts. Now, with nothing but rejection after rejection, he wasn't searching for redemption. There would be no grand apology or attempts to make things right. He simply sat in his apartment, unemployed, isolated, and forgotten. His phone buzzed again. Another rejection email. He didn't open it. Some people confront their mistakes and learn from them. Others, like Derek, lose everything and never understand why. Deep down, though, in a part of him he refused to examine, Derek still believed it wasn't his fault. Meanwhile, Greystone's system was beginning to face consequences. 6 months after Madison's detention, the Department of Defense released its findings on the Greystone Police Department. The results were damning. Night vision equipment and military-grade vehicles worth over $300,000 were recalled immediately. The department had 30 days to return everything or face federal action. And new national regulations were set in motion. Any department with training compliance below 80% would lose access to DoD equipment. No exceptions. Colonel Gray, standing tall in her full-dress uniform, appeared before the Senate Armed Services Committee. Local police are not military personnel, she stated calmly, her voice firm. They serve a different purpose under different laws. If they want military equipment, they need to show military-level discipline and accountability. Anything less, she emphasized, was a betrayal of public trust. Less than 2 weeks later, Senator Fizer introduced an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act. It became known as the Gray Clause. The amendment mandated annual audits for every police department receiving DoD gear, reporting on their training, use of force incidents, and complaint resolutions. Departments failing audits for 2 years straight would be banned from receiving DoD equipment. The amendment passed with overwhelming bipartisan support, 68 votes for, 32 against. 8 months later, the Department of Justice wrapped up its investigation. The findings were clear. Systemic failures in training, accountability, and constitutional policing were rampant. Greystone Police Department was placed under a federal consent decree for 5 years. An independent monitor would oversee every use of force case. Body cameras were now mandatory, with footage automatically uploaded to secure storage. There would be no manual shutoffs, no glitches. Officers would undergo bias training every 6 months, led by outside experts. These changes marked a shift toward accountability, but the road to rebuilding trust was just beginning. A new oversight board was created, granted veto power over use of force policies. Within weeks of the decree, Chief Briggs retired, marking the end of an era. In his place, the city appointed Michelle, a seasoned reformer from Oregon. Her first move was bold. Every officer had to recertify in constitutional policing. 12 officers chose to walk away rather than comply. Ultimately, the department became stronger for it. Madison's case didn't fade away. It sparked a shift. Within a year, her story was referenced in a dozen lawsuits, challenging unjust detentions based on assumptions. A new organization, the Believe the Kid Coalition, emerged in response. Their mission was clear: provide legal support for minors during police interactions and distribute Know Your Rights materials in schools. Meanwhile, Gray's personal account was featured in Military Times, where she was hailed as the colonel who held the line at home. The article went viral across military bases, touching the hearts of countless service members. The Army, eager to embrace the story's power, produced a recruitment video featuring military parents with their children. The tagline was simple yet impactful: "When you serve, we serve too, and we protect our own." As a result, applications for law enforcement oversight roles from military spouses surged by 40%. What began as one girl's experience with injustice grew into a symbol of accountability. Madison Gay's name was now synonymous with change. It wasn't just about one officer or one department. It was about proving that true accountability is possible when pursued with unwavering dedication. Change was slow and systems resisted, but Madison's story had already shown the world that even the truth of a 17-year-old could ignite transformation, provided someone with power took the time to listen. For Madison and her mother, life began to settle, but the past would never be forgotten. A year later, the sun poured through the kitchen window of the Gray household, illuminating the quiet routine. Madison, now 13, sat at the table, casually scrolling through her laptop while eating cereal. Her confidence was the quiet strength of someone who had endured and emerged resilient. Gray, at the counter, sipped her coffee while reviewing routine military reports. Life had returned to its regular pace: deployments, briefings, and the steady rhythm of military life. The urgency of the past crisis had receded, leaving only the lessons it taught. Madison spoke without looking up. "Mom, there's this National Youth Leadership Conference next month. Applications are due in 2 weeks. You applying?" Gray glanced over, a smile tugging at her lips. "Yeah, the essay question is, describe a moment that taught you resilience." Madison grinned, her eyes gleaming with understanding. "Sounds like you've got plenty of material." Gray chuckled. "Maybe just a little." The weight of that day at the mall, the confusion, the injustice, still lingered in the back of Madison's mind, but it no longer consumed her. It had become a chapter in her story. The moment she learned that truth was worth defending, even when no one believed her. She had learned something else too, that her mother's protection knew no bounds. Courage, Madison now understood, wasn't about being fearless. It was about taking a breath, holding steady, and waiting for the right moment to act. That morning, an unexpected letter arrived. The usual pile of bills and junk mail was shuffled aside as Gray found an official envelope with the Greystone Police Department's logo. She paused when she saw the return address, the new chief's name. She opened it carefully, revealing a handwritten note. Colonel Gray, I've reviewed all the files related to Madison's case. What your daughter endured was inexcusable, and while I can't undo it, I can pledge to ensure it never happens again. Under the new oversight board, we've implemented the Verify Before Assume protocol. Officers must now confirm claims and contact guardians before taking action with minors. We require documented proof of reasonable suspicion, not just assumptions. Around the station, officers have started calling it the Gray Rule. I hope this meets your and Madison's approval. We are not perfect, but we are committed to becoming better. Respectfully, Chief Michelle. Gray read the letter twice before showing it to Madison. Madison read it in silence, then looked up. Cool. I hope no one has to endure what I did for them to figure out basic decency, Madison says, her voice quiet, but carrying the weight of her experience. Gray gives a small nod, her voice steady but soft. That's the purpose of change, kid. We push so the next person doesn't have to face the same thing. We push so the system bends before it breaks someone else. Madison's brow furrows as she watches the world around them, the weight of the question still hanging in the air. Do you think it will stick? Or will they forget once the spotlight fades? Gray looks out at the horizon, thinking for a moment before responding. That's why we keep pushing. Change doesn't hold on its own. It requires constant effort. The minute we stop paying attention, everything starts slipping back. As the evening settles, they sit on the front porch, the dying light of the day casting everything in soft, golden hues. A young neighbor rides his bike past, blissfully unaware, his laughter ringing out. There's no officer questioning his right to exist in public, no one stopping him for no reason other than his presence. Madison watches the boy until he disappears around the corner. Do you think Officer Kane ever understood what he did? Gray is quiet for a moment, her thoughts gathering before she speaks. Maybe not. Some people care more about being right than being better. But what really matters is this. The system got the message. A bad cop is a problem we can fix with a firing. A system that shields those bad cops? That's a crisis, and that's what we had to change. Madison shifts, considering the weight of the words. So, did we fix it? Gray looks at her daughter, her voice firm but filled with hope. We've started the fix. True change takes years, even generations. We've tipped one domino and now others have to keep pushing it. The two sit in quiet, comfortable stillness, the sky slowly changing from gold to pink, then to purple. Finally, Gray breaks the silence, her tone full of pride. You stood up when it mattered most, even when I wasn't ready, when you were scared, and when no one believed you. I'm proud of you. Madison leans in, her voice quiet but filled with meaning. I learned it from you, Mom. Gray pulls her closer, wrapping her arm around her daughter. Some victories are loud and public, shaking the world. But there are other victories, quiet, personal moments of change. A child safe, a system slightly more just than it was. This is one of those. Madison's story isn't rare. Across the country, thousands of children face authority figures who refuse to listen. Not because they're lying, but because the adults have already decided the truth, based on assumptions and biases. Most of these kids don't have mothers with connections to the Pentagon. They don't have access to federal investigations or Senate hearings. They endure their humiliations in silence, learning early that the system isn't made to protect them. But every now and then, the wrong person is targeted. Every so often, the truth walks in wearing boots and bringing with it a power that can't be ignored. Madison's case became a turning point because of the resources her mother had, but the principle is universal. Children deserve to be believed, not doubted based on their appearance. Every bully's downfall begins with one person standing up. One person refuses to back down. One person makes enough noise until someone with real power hears them. Want more stories where real accountability happens? Where those who abuse their power face consequences? Hit subscribe and the notification bell. The next story drops in 48 hours. You won't want to miss it. If this story reminded you that justice matters, that accountability is possible when people refuse to stay silent, share it. Send it to someone who needs to hear it. Tag someone who's been underestimated and proven everyone wrong. And remember, a badge doesn't grant righteousness. A uniform doesn't guarantee integrity. Real power comes from standing firm in your truth and refusing to let anyone make you small. This isn't the end. It's just the beginning of what happens when truth meets visibility. At Beat Stories, we believe exposure is the first step toward transformation. Subscribe and stay tuned because the next story might be yours.